So in this video, we are going to be continuing to take a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. We are now on episode 48 of the series, and in the last episode we saw a lot of events related to the Cold War take place. Now, we mostly focused on lore stuff last episode. There wasn't a whole lot of changes on the map, but it still was important. But we will be more so focusing on actual changes on the map today, and this episode is going to be a very important one, very tied in with the Cold War, so you guys do not want to miss this one. But if you guys do end up enjoying this episode, please make sure to like and subscribe, and let's just get straight into it. So, starting this episode off with a bang, we're going to have something really bad happening. For one of the major Cold War countries at the minute, there are three, and then there's kind of Tokyo on the side. But we're more so going to be looking at the USB, because up until now, the USB's nuclear program had remained a complete secret. No other country had known that the USB has nuclear bombs. Everyone knows that India and Egypt do, and everyone knows that Tokyo does. But with the USB, they have managed to keep their program under wraps, and it has been absolutely pivotal that they do so, because they have been going after other countries, such as Egypt, India, and Tokyo, all of the three other nuclear powers, for having nuclear bombs. Recently, relations have been going kind of down the drain with Tokyo, due to the nuclear problem, also because Tokyo has been invading countries in the Council of Nations, which the USB really does not like, so at the minute relations between these two aren't so great. But in regards to the USB's nuclear bombs, we have some spies from a certain green country in Africa actually managing to discover that the USB, they have their own nuclear bombs, and they are going to go ahead and immediately tell the international community, and all of a sudden, everyone starts pointing fingers at the USB. Everyone is like, hey, you are going after us for having nukes, and you have nukes yourself. You are a complete hypocrite. The USB doesn't really have a response for this other than self-defense, which I guess is a fair reason. But everyone is really mad that the USB has kind of been going after other countries for doing this, or for developing nuclear bombs when they have it themselves. And this is going to cause a complete relation split between Tokyo and the USB. Yeah, and at this point, it's kind of official that the Cold War is a four-way war, except between Egypt and Tokyo. These two guys, they really don't care. But yeah, all four of these guys are now somewhat throwing hands with each other, and it's a big mess. Like I have said before, the Council of Nations is doing their best to kind of de-escalate tensions, and so far they've actually done a pretty major job. There haven't been any wars between these countries, despite the fact that they have horrible relations. But yeah. But anyway, moving away from that, there is actually going to be something we're going to be taking a look at now. That is going to be quite an interesting event. But first, we will be looking at something kind of related to that. This whole thing is going to be about decolonization. First of all, the Pyrenean Congo. This has been long overdue, but the Pyrenean Congo is finally going to be getting independence this episode. So, as we can see here, the Pyrenean Congo is granted full independence. I'm sure Pyrenesia will probably maintain control of some naval bases, but overall this country is completely released. However, there is a pretty major issue in this country, and that is that there are kind of two different groups of peoples. In the main Congo area, you have people that really align with the ideals and principles of the Pyreneans. Due to the amount of companies and just industry that Pyrenesia had set up in the Congo, most of the people living in this portion of the Congo are actually Pyrenean ethnicity instead of native Congolese, as there wasn't really a country here before. However, in the more eastern portion, more specifically this kind of populated region with these major cities over here, the culture more so aligns with some of these native African countries, more specifically these three being Somalia, Tanzania, and Mozambique, or Malawi, rather, this country is Malawi. So what we see here is a pretty big schism in the government, and we see a portion of the country over here actually break away, and they form their own new country, and the central government in the Congo doesn't really know what to do about this. However, these two guys immediately have really bad relations. Yeah, so that's not a really great thing to see there. In regards of capitals, I'm going to give the Congo, I'm actually going to put their capital on this coastal city right here. In reality, it would probably be on the Congo River, but there are none except for this one up here, which doesn't really make sense. And then for this red team, it really doesn't matter. I'm just going to put it on this city right here. And that is what we see there. But now for the event I was talking about that is also related to decolonization, is actually going to be down here in Indian Mozambique. Now, Indian Mozambique, where do I start with this? This area has always been under control of India. There were no countries here, I believe, before. The Purple Team might have had this land, I genuinely can't remember. But this area has been firmly under control of India. One small issue, however, over the last few years, the population of this country has been rapidly growing, and it hasn't been the religious people of the Indian religion, it's actually been of this native African pink religion or ethnicity, and what we see here is basically the majority religion in some of these areas becomes pink. Now, this isn't the brown religion people moving out. The brown religion people are still here. The religion layer is just to show the majority of the people in that specific area, what religion they are. So all of these people, they're not like being pushed over here. It's nothing like that. They still live here. But it's basically just the majority of people in these areas are now the pink ethnicity slash religion. And it gets so bad to the point where this is the only areas left of Indian ethnicity. Oh yeah, also, I did update the religion layer. Yeah, forgot to mention this, but there are some more religions now. I'm sure this won't lead to anything. But basically, what this leads to is we see some funding come in from a certain foreign power who may not be so much in the liking of India at the minute, taking advantage of the fact that the pink religion kind of feels oppressed under India because obviously they've been colonized. It's not really like Madagascar or Arabia where India claims, oh, these aren't colonies, these are a part of us. They state that this area is a colony. In regards to what I mean by this, I want to go into a bit further detail just because it is kind of important. Um, Basically, if you remember how in real life France kind of claimed how Algeria was like part of them instead of a colony, yeah, that's basically what India's doing there. But that's not what they're doing with Mozambique. And after, like I did say, some funding comes in from a foreign power, we see multiple rebellions break out in the occupation of the pink religion. This is more so in the far north and the far south areas, and these guys declare their independence as the Republic of Mozambique. These peoples basically say, if you take a look at the rest of Africa, there are no colonies anymore. We are a colony. We are long overdue to get independence. We don't like the fact that we are being ruled by a foreign power who is across an entire ocean, and we should have the full right to become our own separate nation, so we will be declaring our independence. That's basically the stance. Now, they would not be able to do this if they weren't receiving support from someone, but they are receiving support from someone. So in the first few months of the war, they actually do extremely well. They manage to kick the Indians all the way back to the kind of coastal regional area and the areas like fully of their religion. We even see some like kind of breakaway areas just spawn in out of nowhere, and immediately very very bad situation for India. And it's kind of quickly shown that the terrain of this area. Now I do believe, I could be wrong, I do believe this area is kind of jungly, kind of like savannah. It's kind of just areas that these rebellions are really well at fighting on. These are their peoples. But it kind of shows that India is really struggling to fight in this terrain, and it's kind of, this is basically India's Vietnam. Yeah, India's really struggling to make pushbacks. They do manage to capture this one major city up here, but in full terms, it's kind of really hard for them to make movements. They have to kind of make some branches out like this from like trade route networks. But apart from that, they can't make like major territorial advances. So what they resort to is bringing over their navy, and they start just bombing all forts and military bases of this rebellion. They use a lot of napalm in the more jungly areas. And yeah, very horrific warfare here. But the rebellion does manage to hang on. And this war will actually be covered over multiple episodes, not just one, as I really just want to show how long this independence war is going to last, or even if it's successful. But we will be looking back at that maybe later in the episode or in another episode. But next up, we will be looking at our nuclear bombs, because, well, nuclear bomb count is rising throughout the course of this episode. More nuclear bombs have been developed, so let's go ahead and take a look at that now. So first of all, the USB is going to go from 9 nuclear bombs all the way up to 17, almost doubling their count. Now, in regards to the year, because I feel like that might be important, we are currently in the year 1959, so yeah, nuclear bombs still not too high. Next up, going over to Egypt, they go from 5 nuclear bombs all the way up to 14. Egypt is the country that is absolutely going in the most on nuclear production. They are the country putting the most money into it and the most technology into it, so they are gaining them the fastest. India is going to go from 19 nuclear bombs all the way up to 29, so they are still quite far ahead. They gain 10 in total, and with Tokyo, they don't really make many. Their nuclear development is still kind of in its infancy, so they only go up to 4, gaining 3, just like so. However, we are actually going to be seeing a new country successfully manage to develop their own nuclear bombs, and it might not actually cause a conflict like you might think it will, because it's actually going to be an ally of one of the countries right here. And that is because the Persians will be successfully creating their first nuclear bomb. Now, these guys are allied with India. Now, the USB, they have some things to say about this, but India was absolutely helping Persia create nuclear bombs here. Now, in regards to some of their other allies, Bangladesh, they don't really mind. They feel protected enough by India. But Persia just was like, okay, we want to get into nuclear bombs. Hey, India, you're our ally. Can you help us? India was like, yeah, sure. India and Persia are very close allies. And that is basically why they have their own nuclear bombs right there. Next up, we need to look at the stability layer, because we're actually going to see something taking place in Mexico that will be important later. As we see the central Mexican country go from an orange to a red stability, this shows that they are on the brink of collapse. They have some pretty major stability issues, and the Council of Nations is actually doing a pretty bad job of focusing on this. They see this as actually so minor based on all the major conflicts in the world right now. Some proxy wars going on, the nuclear stuff. It's kind of just been thrown, to the back of the list, especially because this country is quite weak and it's not very populated. So it's really not been put on the radar there, which will lead to something happening later. But now we need to take a look at something happening that is going to be very important, and it will also be leading to another event that will be happening later in the episode. And that is going to be the formation of a new alliance. So at this point, 3 of the 4 Cold War powers have their pact set up, and I think it's about time that we see another one be set up, and this one is kind of set up as a protective method for a specific country, and that said country is going to be Egypt. And say hello to the Arrow, yes, the Arrow Alliance. Say hello to the Arrow Alliance, as Egypt will be forming the Arrow Alliance. Yes, I'd said that. But we see something happening here that is going to be quite interesting, and like I said, will be leading to something later. And that is actually going to be the Chad country will be joining in on the Arrow Alliance. The Chad country is very aligned to Egypt. Basically, the only reason they haven't already collapsed is because of Egypt. Egypt is looking to gain some influence in Africa, and well, hello there, small, weak country that we can easily take advantage of. Just like that, Chad joins the alliance. Next up, and well, because it's not only going to be these two, the Gujarat country, which doesn't even own Gujarat anymore, is going to be joining the alliance, pretty self-explanatory based on the war they had with India. And finally, and actually pretty surprisingly, Qatar is actually going to be joining in on the Arrow Alliance. Now, they have multiple reasons for doing this. The first is that they actually have pretty good relations with Egypt at the minute. Good relations with Egypt. And the second thing, well, just look at the alliance layer. They are pretty much completely surrounded by either Indian aligned countries or countries influenced by India. We have Persia, India themselves. The Somalian country, they are decently pro-Indian. They did have a fallout with the whole GCL thing. But yeah, they just don't like their situation. So for protection, they are going to go ahead and join in on the Arrow Alliance. And we are going to be seeing one more country. It's surprisingly, this is kind of long overdue. These are kind of just Egypt's allies that I'm showing here. And the final country for now that will be joining in on this alliance is actually going to be Carthage. Now, Carthage, they have a few reasons for this. First of all, they are still quite unstable, and they know another country was funding this rebellion. They don't know who's going after them, but they know someone is going after them. Because of that, they will be joining Egypt's alliance. Also, as we did see, Egypt kind of saved them from being fully demolished by Libya. Egypt did do this because they have decent relations with Carthage. This goes back all the way to like the Diamond Alliance, which was fighting in World War One side by side with Carthage. Well, Carthaginian recruits, they weren't involved in the war fully. But either way, these guys have pretty good relations, so that is what we see there. And all of a sudden, pretty major regional alliance. This is kind of centered in North Africa and the Near East. But yeah, pretty major event there, and I did say that this was actually going to be leading to something, and well, we're going to be seeing that just now. So, Chad is going to go ahead and give Egypt the brilliant idea of building up strength. And basically, what they're going to say is, hey, we're in a pretty bad position at the minute, and you know what, you could use some land. You're quite stable. Well, you're decently stable. But we want some land, and I'm sure you do too. And we also maybe want some access to the coast in Sudan. So, Chad is going to propose to Egypt that they invade and split Sudan, and to be honest, Egypt was probably already thinking of doing this anyway, so Egypt is going to go over to Chad and be like, say no more. Egyptian forces slam straight into Sudan. Now, unfortunately for Sudan, they are not in the Council of Nations. They are also facing one of the strongest countries in the world. Speaking of that, we will be doing power rankings after this. But then Chad is going to be crossing the border into Sudan. They really want some of this Sudanese land. Like I did say, they are really struggling. And Egypt also is saying to them, hey, if you help us invade Sudan, and you know what, we'll give you some land because you're our ally, we will also give you full access to the ports. We just want your help because it might be a bit tricky for us to fight in this terrain, but you're familiar with it. So yeah, that's basically the premise of the war here. But either way, it goes extremely well for Chad. Chad actually manages to prove themselves that they actually have a quite strong army, surprisingly. Their position isn't great, but their army is actually fairly strong. Funding, yeah, but strong army. They are able to do pretty well, especially in the south. This is kind of the regions they want the most of, as it is the most valuable area. But for Egypt, they will be absolutely slamming into this country. If we take a look at the river slate, which I haven't actually pulled up in a while, they're going to go ahead and follow along the Nile. They also cut towards the Nile and fully take this area, and then they begin to move down it. However, at this point, we are actually going to be seeing a new country join in on this war. Now, this new country's justification for joining is to, quote unquote, preserve the land of Sudan. Now, is it really for that? No. But they're going to be joining anyway. It's actually going to be the Somalian country. Somalia, well, they basically just want free land. They are going to be entering into the war, and they quickly cross in. They will struggle on the coast, which is great for Egypt, as seeing the fact that they could lose some coastal land to Somalia, they will blast straight down, capture the capital like it's absolutely nothing, fully take the coast before Somalia even gets the chance to. And this is basically just going to cause Sudan to collapse. They came back for like 3 episodes just to get invaded by Egypt, so rest in peace. And we're going to go ahead now and take a look at this peace treaty. So, this is what we see for this peace treaty. I'm going to go ahead and break it down now, and yeah, if you thought Saddam was surviving this, you are sorely mistaken, my friend. So, first of all, and the most insignificant, we see Somalia go ahead and take this portion of land right here. They really didn't do too much in the war, they kind of joined in the late stages, but they will be granted all of this land right here. Next up, moving on to Chad, they gain all of this land up here and this land down here, managing to take 2 more major cities, which is really great for them. And like I did say, they also gain access to any ports on the coast. And last things, Egypt gets really big. Egypt has basically just doubled in size there. Now, luckily for them, this land isn't going to really cause too much instability because, well, no one lives there. But yeah, very great for Egypt, and their borders look very sexy now. We love these Egypt borders. But anyway, that is what we see for said peace treaty, just like so. Now, how are the reactions of the other countries? Well, the USB, they're going to condemn Egypt for this. Even worse relations, whoopity-doo. India, honestly, could not care less. It's an irrelevant country that they had no involvement in. They're going to condemn Egypt anyway. And Tokyo doesn't mind. At this point, Tokyo and Egypt still have fine relations with each other. I'm sure they have a slightly negative view because they are kind of competing. But for the most part, these two guys are still doing fine. But yeah, that is what we see there. Next up, we're actually going to be taking a look at the alliances layer. This is actually going to be something that it doesn't really matter, but this Horn of Africa / East Africa alliance is actually going to be dissolved. And this happens between a really big fallout between Somalia and Tanzania. Basically, they were discussing the future of this alliance. Tanzania was all in on adding more countries to this pact, but then Somalia, seeing the risks that this may have, considering the fact that the countries they were thinking about adding are like new countries that could cause some issues in the economy or the currency, they said no, and this led to a really big fight. Not wanting to get involved, Malawi just noped out, and that basically caused it to collapse. And now these two guys really don't like each other, so yeah. But now we're going to be moving down over to Australia because something pretty interesting is going to be happening here. That, well, it's not going to be too great if you like the orange Australian country, because after some more funding from Indonesia and an actual mystery country that I will not be saying, the red team is going to go ahead and go for their second approach on the orange Australian country. If we take a look at the religion layer, we can see that some of this area still does follow the Indonesian religion. It wasn't annexed in the peace treaty because they really didn't think it would be needed. However, some groups in this region have been calling for they want to join the red team. The orange team has obviously rejected this. And, well, of course, the only way to settle this is war, right? So we're going to go ahead and see the red team cross the border into the orange country for the second time. The red team is heavily being funded by Indonesia and, like I said, another country. However, this is actually going to cause an immediate reaction by not only the Council of Nations as a whole, but most notably the United States of Brazil. Now, the USB, they already condemned the red team for doing this the first time. Now, the first time it was kind of justified because, you know, it's the people of that country, but this time it's just needless aggression. So what we actually have happening is the USB is going to send over some ships, and they're going to station it from some... they probably have this island over here, because, you know, why not? France probably had it and they took it in the World War II peace treaty, let's go with that. But they use this island as a naval base, and they're going to go ahead and go over to the orange country, and they're going to say, hey, we really want to help you out here, but the only issue is we don't really want to risk like really worsening relations with Indonesia and maybe even entering into a war against the red team. So what we're going to do is we're going to supply you with a lot of weapons, and we're also going to try and figure out what country is funding the red Australian country, because Indonesia, they're strong, but there is some interesting technology here that Indonesia doesn't have. But in the meanwhile, this war is going to continue to go on. And yeah, it's a pretty bad war if you like the orange team, because the red team, they are far stronger. The country that is funding them secretly is very strong. And yeah, it's just really bad. The capital of the orange country is even approached and then encircled. And what we actually have happen at this point is the USB is going to be like, okay, yeah, we're putting our foot down. They start directly funding the orange country and even start sending some troops over. And this kind of leads to the first proxy war that the USB is involved in. And why do I say that? Well, it's been revealed what country is funding the red Australian country. I'll give you guys 5 seconds to guess it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's Tokyo. Yep, that's right. Tokyo is funding the red team and Indonesia as well to go in and take over the orange team. And what is going to happen when the USB finds out and starts publicly accusing Tokyo of doing this? Uh-oh. Yeah, so just like that, Indonesia and the red Australian country both enter into the Gear Alliance, or Tokyo's Pact. And yeah, this is really bad for the USB. First of all, they are now in an active conflict with a member of Tokyo's alliance, and not too sure how Tokyo would feel about that. But also, Indonesia. Indonesia is a top 10 power. They are a very technologically advanced power. And yeah, this is kind of fully wreck relations between the USB and Indonesia. They were already not too great considering, well, they're kind of fighting against each other. But with this happening, yeah, that's not so good. This also continues to worsen relations between the Triangle Alliance and the Gear Alliance because, well, Indonesia and India, boy do these two have a history. But yeah, great tension rising point, and Egypt is now looking back at this and they're like, yeah, what is going on here? We're glad we're not involved in this fully. But yeah, how is this war going to go now that the USB is basically fighting Tokyo's alliance? Well, as soon as it comes out that these two countries have joined the Gear Alliance, the USB is going to go ahead and fully retreat from the orange Australian country. This is a very big morale boost for Tokyo, and it kind of makes the USB look weak, like they just back down. But the USB is heavily against starting a major war with Tokyo, so they're just going to go ahead and let Tokyo have this one. They don't know what Tokyo's response will be if they continue to fight a member of their own alliance, so like I have just said, they are going to go ahead and fully back out. And within a few months of this, with there no longer being any support for the Orange country, they are going to go ahead and fully surrender. So this is what we see for this peace treaty here. The red team is going to be fully annexing the orange team. Now this does make them quite unstable, however they are receiving funding from Tokyo and Indonesia. Now that Tokyo doesn't have to hide the fact that they're funding the red team, they just really go at it and help these guys out a lot. Now, the USB in the peace talks was really on about like letting the orange country survive as a little small city-state down here. It was going to be these 3 provinces, but they really had no power to do so, and Tokyo put a little bit of pressure on the USB. Yeah, the USB, they can be pressured. It's not just because Tokyo is weaker they can't be. Yeah, the USB gets pressured into not doing so. So yeah, the red team, they managed to fully take over this half of Australia, which is a pretty major boost for them. Just a few episodes ago, I believe they looked like this, and they've kind of like quadrupled in size. So yeah, a very big glow up for them. But I think we're going to be taking a look at one final event in this episode. We might look at 2. I want to put some more stuff into this episode. I want it to be a very meaty episode. And what we're going to be looking at is over here in Central Asia, because the anarchists are going to be at it once more. The anarchists, they've kind of been chill for a while. I believe they haven't done anything since episode 45. But they are going to be back at it again, as they are going to be invading the Grey Team once again. And I know I have said this before, it's kind of like a repeat. Grey Team, not in the Council of Nations. Grey Team, very unstable. Grey Team, not technologically advanced. The anarchists are going to absolutely wipe the floor with this country, quickly invading in and taking the capital city, taking this city, and yeah, bye-bye. Now, notably, it's at this point where Baikal is really starting to put their foot down. As a regional member of the Council of Nations, it's their duty to stop disputes in their region. Now, the only reason they haven't done this before is that none of the countries that the anarchists have been invading are Council of Nations members, but Baikal is still kind of going after the anarchists for doing this, as, well, they're invading weak neutral countries. And Baikal is going to be publicly condemning the anarchists for doing this, and this is going to lead to a lot of tensions between these 2 countries. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty. Now, taking a look at this peace treaty here, we actually see something pretty interesting happen. The anarchists don't actually fully annex the Grey Team, they leave it to be a small country down here. However, this country is extremely weak, very chaotic, so the Green Team may or may not be taking these guys soon. And you know what, because that was a very small war, I'm actually going to be discussing one more thing. It's going to be a continuation of the Mozambique Independence War. So what has been happening in this time? Well, the Mozambique country has actually managed to recapture this major city. However, unfortunately for them, they were cut in 2, and India had actually managed to see some pretty major progress in the south. We also do see them kind of go into this southern region, however this did get pushed out pretty quickly, and the Indian kind of encirclement, well, it's not really an encirclement, but it is pushed back on to something like this. But that is actually going to be it for this episode. I really hope you guys did enjoy. A lot of lore important stuff was in this episode. If you did enjoy, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next episode.